Good morning, Mr. Melton. My name is Attorney Amai Cruz. I have the privilege and honor of representing Mr. Faust. And under the authority of this court, I'm going to ask you some questions, okay?
Certainly.
Okay. Why didn't you cry
When?
just now? Why didn't any tears fall out of your eyes?
They are falling now.
Okay. Well, let's talk about January 19th. Would you agree that today you were much more emotional than you were on the day that you learned of Miss Baker's death?
I was holding it together best I could.
So your borderline fiance is murdered and you were holding it together on the 19th, but 25 years later, you have emotion about it?
In that moment, when I'm finding this out,
Mr. Melton, that's a yes or no question.
Judge, the witness is allowed to answer Mr. Cruz's question.
That's correct.
when this tragedy occurred, and I'm taking this information in, I am telling myself inside, do not collapse in this moment. Hold it together. There are other people that are also relying on you, and I had to get through this. And that's where I'm at.
Who was relying on you during your initial interview with police?
The police, her family, her friends, anyone who loved her.
So the police were relying on you to hold it together during the interview.
If I'm not holding it together, I can't think things through.
Did you know that your DNA was found in Miss Baker's anus?
I was informed.
Who told you that?
Liz and Jeremy from the GBI.
When did they tell you that? Because in the recorded interview that we have, they didn't mention that to you.
That's my recollection.
My question is when? When did they tell you?
If that's not the correct recollection, I'm not sure at this moment.
Let me ask you this. When was the last time you met with the state?
This morning,
Okay. And they talked to you about your testimony?
we went over what the courtroom would be like.
Okay. So this is rehearsed. Is that fair to say?
I wouldn't say rehearsed.
But you went over it not just this morning, you went over it a couple of times last week, is that right?
We have established a process in which would occur in this courtroom as far as steps that are taken once I get here and whatnot.
Okay. So the questions that you were asked today, you already knew you were going to be asked those questions, correct?
Yes. Can I say something to this?
Mr. Melton, would you like a slim mark or a big mark?
Slim.
All right. Let the record reflect that I am going to give you a black Sharpie, okay? I'd like you to write the very first time that you mentioned during your direct examination in regards to your actions or where you went on January 19, 2001. Do you understand that?
Yes.
May I approach the witness, Your Honor?
May?
Can you please write the first place you went on January 19th on that board?
And Your Honor, I would ask that if Mr. Cruz is going to ask the witness to engage in whatever this is, that be repositioned to a place where the jury can actually see it.
I could do that. We'll start on page 2.
And we'd like to also be able to see it. I guess, Judge, do you want us to move or do you want him to move it over there?
Mr. Cruz, I think perhaps moving that back would be best for everyone to take a look at it. Thank you, Mr. Hill.
Sure. Sure. Can you write the first place you went and the time that you went to that location? Okay. So I want to make sure I'm correct. You wrote Nash Plumbing 7:30 to 7:45. Okay. So you remember from January 19, 2001, you went to Nash Plumbing between those times. Is that fair to say? Okay. But you could not remember when law enforcement asked you if you knew Miss Baker was going to be alone in 2006?
During certain questions.
You can take a seat, Mr. Melton.
Along the way, I'm questioned about certain things, and I pull up my best recollection. Post this, I've been traumatized. I'm grieving. My mind is certain things and certain times. It's hard to pull from. And in those moments, stressed also, in times it's more difficult than others in certain moments to recollect certain things. And that's, sir.
Let me cut you off. So it's easier to recollect alibi than it is to recollect whether or not the girl that you love told you that she was going to be home alone.
This question is argumentative and improper.
Sustained.
Sure. So it's easy to remember where you went on the 19th. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. Mr. Melton, so after you left Nash Plumbing, where did you go?
After I left Nash Plumbing, I went to the bank.
Okay. Can you write the time that you arrived at the bank on the board? You can just put bank and then you can put the time. So just ask you. So you can remember that you went to Nash Plumbing, and then after that, you can remember that you went to the bank from January 19, 2001.
That's correct.
But you cannot remember from January 18th whether or not Miss Baker told you she was going to be alone.
At that time, it could depend on when the question's asked. It's not, if it's in a stressful moment, I'm going through things and trying to pull from times prior to this, when I'm not trying to, how should I say, lock in on certain things previous to this, it is difficult.
Would you agree?
Previous to her death. Go ahead.
I didn't hear you. Say that one more time.
I should say, it's like certain days, if somebody asks you what you have for breakfast, I couldn't tell you. But if I'm concentrating on after certain times, yes, I can, on certain things. But it's hard to describe.
So I'll switch gears because I do want to talk about a difficult subject with you. You mentioned that you were told that your DNA was in Miss Baker's anus. Is that right?
Yes, there was a point in time I found out.
And we've agreed that that time didn't occur during your
No.
recorded interview. Is that right?
I can't recall.
That is fair. So let me ask you this, Mr. Melton. You would agree that Miss Baker did not engage in anal sex with you. Is that correct?
That's correct.
You would agree that Miss Baker was sexually assaulted anally. Is that correct?
I wouldn't really know if she was sexually assaulted anally. Like, I don't
Well, we can't have it both ways, Mr. Melton.
understand
You previously stated that Miss Bigham
I see.
and Jeremy Howell told you that your DNA was in her anus. Can we agree on that? Is that fair to say?
Maybe I'm mistaken on how I found that information out. Maybe
I'm going to object to lack of personal knowledge. Mr. Cruz is asking this witness about information relayed to him as hearsay by other witnesses who had the actual information. So I think that's both lack of personal knowledge as well as calling for hearsay.
All right. Any response to the objection, Mr. Cruz?
Sure. Mr. Melton stated that he was aware that his DNA was found in Miss Baker's anus. He stated that Miss Bigham and Jeremy Howell were the individuals that told him, and we're fleshing out his knowledge in regards to what he's aware of, Your Honor.
I think as to the form of the question, I'm going to sustain the objection. You may rephrase if you choose to do so.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. Thank you, Your Honor. But there should be no reason that your DNA should be in Miss Baker's anus. Would you agree?
I mean, other than if we have had sex and it has transferred from there and, say, drained down to that area. But
That is interesting that you say drain, because did you know that's the exact same thing the state is arguing in this case?
I mean, it makes sense, though.
So your DNA is in her anus because it drained down in her anus. Is that your position?
I would say that would.
Again, Your Honor, lack of personal knowledge, lack of foundation. There's been no foundation laid that Mr. Melton's aware of these things. That would all be through GBI crime lab witnesses who do have personal knowledge and scientific information. And so there's no foundation for these questions, and he's asking for things that are outside of Mr. Melton's personal knowledge. He's asking about things.
I would object to a speaking objection, Your Honor, and just ask the state to state the ground.
Okay, I'm going to overrule that objection. He was just explaining his objection. I'm going to respond in the same way as the last objection. I'm going to sustain the objection as to the form of the question, allow you to rephrase if you choose to do so.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. Thank you, Your Honor. Would you agree that in order for your DNA to drain into Miss Baker's anus, you would have to have sex with her? Can we agree on that point?
Agree.
Did you have sex with Miss Baker the day of her death?
No, sir.
The last time you saw Miss Baker, was it 6 days before or 10 days before?
From the beginning, I've said I saw her the weekend prior.
From the beginning, you've said that?
Yes, sir.
That you've seen her the weekend, and that has always been what you said.
There was a time that I was confused,
Mm-hmm.
and it was 20 plus years later.
Mm-hmm.
And then I made a statement that I felt like maybe it was 10 days prior. And I was confused at that point because I have always said from even meeting with the detectives from the beginning that we were together that weekend. And then time had gone by, and I had even spoke out publicly for the first time.
Mr. Melton, to my question, is that a yes or a no?
Judge, he's in the middle of providing his answer. Again, the witness has a right to answer Mr. Cruz's questions in the manner that he believes the answer should be given.
It's non-responsive, Your Honor, and I would ask the state to stop the speaking objections because they are coaching the witness in the middle of his testimony.
Okay, I'm going to overrule that objection and I'm going to sustain the state's objection. This witness is allowed to respond to your question. And if he's in the middle of responding, no one can interrupt. You may continue if you choose to do so.
Well, time had gone by. And then I had spoken publicly at this point. I have stated over and over again that we were together the weekend before. And then there was a point in time that Tara's mother had stated that she was at her house.
I'm going to object to hearsay.
I am going to sustain that objection.
Your Honor,
Yes.
I don't want to send the jury out, but I would like to approach to understand the parameters
Okay.
of which I could. Your current residence, I won't say your address, but your current residence is the same residence that your parents stayed in 2001. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. And at that time, you stayed in the basement. Is that correct?
At that time, I would have been on the second story.
Forgive me.
Bedroom.
I asked that question wrong. The week before Tara's death, you went to your parents' home. Is that correct?
That's correct.
During that time, you stayed in the basement. Is that right?
No, sir. I think it was in my old bedroom in the second story.
Court's indulgence, Your Honor. So, Mr. Melton, this isn't the first time you've been asked that question, is it?
I can't quite remember.
Okay. Do you recall on May 5th, 2024, being asked where you resided when you went to your parents' home the week before Miss Baker's death?
I don't recall the question.
Say that one more time. You don't recall what now?
I don't recall.
Being asked that question?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Do you recall making the statement, so I was working there and driving back and forth? Well, my parents, we had a furnished basement. So then that's where I was. Do you recall making that statement?
I don't recall making the statement, but it seems okay.
Judge, I move to introduce as defense exhibit number 32, Mr. Melton's May 5th, 2024 interview with Miss Elizabeth Bigham. Minute mark is 1442 through 1448. And before I introduce this, you do recall speaking with Miss Bigham, is that correct?
That's correct.
Your Honor, I would ask to play minute mark 1442 through 1448 into the record.
All right. Any objection from the state?
I don't think any of the foundation for proper admission has been laid. However, if this is that interview, the state would stipulate to the foundation for the admissibility.
Can you all confer about whether that's accurate since you're offering to stipulate? All right. You may proceed. And it is, are you asking to admit it, Mr. Cruz?
Yes, ma'am.
All right.
That portion.
And just that portion. Mr. Yalamanchili, are you objecting to what Mr. Cruz has just offered into evidence? That particular disc?
I don't have a transcript pulled up, Judge, but accepting Mr. Cruz's representation that what he's going to play is the answer that he just asked Mr. Melton about that he didn't recall, I don't have any objection.
All right. And it is that minute mark that the defense has just articulated is admitted.
Thank you, Your Honor.
And you said that was what, Mr. Cruz? I'm sorry,
1442
Thank you. Go ahead.
through 1448.
Okay.
I was working there and driving back and forth. Well, my parents, that we had a finished basement. So then that's
And so
where I was keeping in well, pretty much Jersey there and driving back and forth. Well, my parents, that we had a finished basement. So then that's
And so
where I was keeping in well, pretty much Jersey.
Okay, did you hear that? I was driving back and forth. We pretty much had a huge basement. That's where I was keeping, and then I cut the audio off.
I hear that.
So you were staying in the basement, is that correct?
I would stay in. There's times I stay in both. We had finished basement and had the bedroom upstairs.
Okay.
And the furnished basement was set up as a place to stay, a place to hang out for whoever.
Objection,
And also
non-responsive.
overruled.
So
You may continue with your.
the finished basement would have like a couch, sofa, TV, things, and my old bedroom upstairs also had a bed and so forth. And I would stay and hang out in one, stay in the other, depending on who was there at the time. If we had visitors or whatnot. So I would stay in the basement if nobody else is using it.
I'm going to overrule the objection.
Yes, ma'am.
You may continue.
So with that being said, I feel like kind of both are true. I had my old bedroom and they had a furnished basement.
I'd like to show you what's been marked as Defense Exhibit 33 and Defense Exhibit 34. Let the record reflect that I'm showing Mr. Melton what has been marked as Defense Exhibit 33 and Defense Exhibit 34. And Mr. Melton, you recognize Defense Exhibit 33 and Defense Exhibit 34 as photographs of your house. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, and I believe Defense Exhibit 33 is the side of your house, and Defense Exhibit 34 is the back side of your house. Is that right?
That's correct.
Your Honor, I would move to, have those photographs been altered in any way?
No.
And that's a fair and accurate depiction of your home. Is that correct?
Correct.
Your Honor, I would move to admit Defense Exhibit 33 and Defense Exhibit 34 into evidence.
No objection.
They are admitted.
Now, Mr. Melton, you would agree there's a reason why you would say that you were staying in the second story of the house, correct?
As far as
There's a back door exit on the basement. I believe that's Defense Exhibit 34, if I'm not mistaken. Is that right?
there's a basement exit, yes, sir.
And there's also a side exit from the basement, which was Defense Exhibit 33. Is that correct?
There's one exit. There's a door on the backside that goes into like a dead space that's more for access.
So Defense Exhibit 34, the backside is a door to enter and exit the basement where you don't have to go in the house. Is that right?
The side door would be. The back door is not.
But either way, there's an exit there's an exit from the basement and an entrance into the basement. Is that right?
That's correct.
Now, you recall your parents talking to law enforcement?
They did.
And they were one of your alibi witnesses. Is that right? Were you aware of that?
I would say yes. They knew I was there.
And you're their only child?
I am.
And by the time law enforcement spoke with them, you had been staying with them for 4 months. Is that correct?
I had started staying with them after this incident. Yes. So, yes.
After Tara's passing?
That's correct.
So if any other witness said you moved home months before, that would be untrue.
That's correct.
I want to talk to you about Miss Baker a little bit, okay? We'll switch gears and come back to some of this stuff. Would it be fair to describe Miss Baker as super friendly?
That'd be a fair statement.
You would also describe her as down to earth?
Correct.
She did not have any racial biases?
No, sir.
And although she was a law student, you would agree that she was not pretentious?
I mean, no, sir. Not unless it's for little specialty things like her collections of things, but no.
Now, is it fair to describe Miss Baker as a casual dresser, shorts, hiking boots, sweat top type of girl?
Yes, sir.
She was more of a flats over heels kind of girl. Is that fair to say?
Fair to say.
Okay. And she had more of on her day-to-day appearance, she had more of a casual appearance that did not include daily makeup. Is that right?
I would say, light makeup, if any.
I'd like to show you what would be marked as Defense Exhibit 35. Your Honor, I'd like to approach the witness to show him Defense Exhibit 35. Do you recognize the photo of Miss Baker?
It's Miss Baker. Still,
And is that how Miss Baker, makeup-wise, hair-wise, is that how she carried herself mostly on a daily basis?
I'd say yes.
Right. And that's the fair, accurate depiction of Miss Baker as you would remember her.
I'd say yes, sir.
Okay. Your Honor, I would move to admit defense exhibit 35 into evidence.
Any objection?
No objection, Judge.
It is admitted.
Thank you, Your Honor. Now I'd like to ask you about the times that you visited Miss Baker's home in Deer Park. Is that okay?
Okay.
All right. Is it fair to say that you've probably visited Deer Park more times than you could count?
I mean, she wasn't there a terribly long time, but I would say, yeah. I mean, we've been there many times.
Okay. And during the times that you'd visit Miss Baker's apartment, you'd see normal foot traffic. Is that fair to say?
That's fair to say.
And that foot traffic was due to a Walmart being on the opposite side of the neighborhood. Is that correct?
I'd say there's a Walmart, yes, sir. And then,
Now, the majority of that foot traffic, it was African Americans walking. Is that fair to say?
it's fair to say.
And those African Americans were typically in the late teenage, young adult range. Is that correct?
I would say it would vary, but I would say young teenagers, I would say.
Now, in regards to Miss Baker's passing, on January 19th, you testified that you went to the scene of Miss Baker's death.
That's correct.
And while at the crime scene, you were asked to identify Miss Baker.
That's correct.
Okay, and you were shown a single photo of Miss Baker. Is that right?
That's correct.
You're going to let the record reflect that I'm showing the state what has been marked as defense exhibit 36. Let the record reflect that I'm showing Mr. Melton what has been marked as defense exhibit 36. You recognize that photo?
I don't believe it's the photo I saw.
This was the photo that you were shown to ask to identify Miss Baker?
No,
This was not the
I
photo.
don't believe that was the photo.
Can you describe the photo that you were shown to identify Miss Baker?
I believe that her head was turned slightly and there's coverage that
Mr. Melton, you're just shown a photograph of Miss Baker deceased, and you have not shed a tear.
I think I need a moment, like,
Sure.
put it all together. Okay.
So let's switch gears while we're here. You testified on direct examination that you became so upset that you punched the wall in your apartment. Is that correct?
When I unleashed the emotions, yes.
Okay. And when you unleashed the emotions, you became extremely angry. Is that correct?
I was upset. Yes, I was upset at the situation.
And the way you chose to release your emotions was through violence. Would you agree?
Towards that wall.
But you told the jury that the injuries to your hands came from punching the wall. Is that right?
My injuries came from punching the wall.
Okay. And we've already agreed. Well, you've testified that the wall was sheetrock. Is that correct?
That's correct.
I'd like to show you what would be marked as defense exhibit 37, defense exhibit 38, defense exhibit 39, and defense exhibit 40. Let the record reflect that I am showing the state what has been marked as defense exhibit 37 through defense exhibit 40. Your Honor, let the record reflect that I'm showing Mr. Melton what has been marked as defense exhibit 38 through defense exhibit 40.
I have 37 also.
I'm sorry, 37
Go ahead.
through 40. Please forgive me. Is it okay if I approach you, Mr. Melton?
Yes, yes, sir.
Please take a moment and take a look at defense exhibit 37 through defense exhibit 40. You recognize defense exhibit 37 through defense exhibit 40 as the wall that you punched. Is that correct?
I would say yes.
Okay. And is that a fair and accurate depiction of how that wall looked after you punched it?
I'd say from what I could recollect.
Sure. Has that photograph been altered in any way?
I'm not sure. I wouldn't.
But you have no reason to believe that photograph has been altered in any way. Is that correct?
I have no reason to believe.
Okay. Your Honor, I would ask to admit defense exhibit 37 through defense exhibit 40 into evidence.
Any objection?
No objection.
They are admitted.
Thank you, Your Honor. I would ask to publish to the jury.
Granted.
Now let's talk about the injuries to your hands, Mr. Melton.
Yes, sir.
Court's indulgence. And the photographs of your hands have already been admitted through, as Defense Exhibit 29, Selective. And Your Honor, I just asked you to republish the photographs of the hands to the jury.
Granted.
Court's indulgence, Your Honor. I need one of these photographs. Mr. Melton, I am going to show you one of the photos from Defense Exhibit 29, and we're going to talk about some of these injuries. All right. Can you see your hands on the screen, Mr. Melton?
Yes, sir.
Right. And you would agree, for the purposes of the record, I am making a fist. Mr. Melton, you would agree that a fist looks like this. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Can you make a fist and show the jury what your fist looks like? Okay. Excellent. I want to talk about this injury here on the side of your thumb. Can you explain how you got that injury from punching drywall?
My hands are from work.
Are they?
I mean, no, I'm just saying my hands from work are naturally have nicks and such on them, but that very well could have occurred. I mean, from punching through a wall, there's also things inside the wall. There's siding on the wall that has, once you go through, there's nails that may have been there. But at that point, I mean, I have little nicks and cuts just from my profession.
But Mr. Melton, isn't it fair to say as a plumber, you wear gloves?
No, sir.
You never wear gloves?
I wear gloves, but not 100% of the time. No, sir.
Well, I showed you Defense Exhibit 37 through Defense Exhibit 40. There's a pair of gloves hanging on your wall, Mr. Melton.
Hanging on my wall.
But you don't use them.
When you're working with your hands, you work quickly also. And you don't have time to always have gloves on. And at that point in time, I'm not working with raw sewage or anything. This is new materials. So with that being said, you not worried about bacteria or anything infecting your hands. You just work through it.
So today, on February 9th, 2026, you remember exactly how you were working on January 19, 2001.
It's easily to assess because I worked it for so long.
Sure. But you don't remember whether or not Ms. Baker told you she was going to be home alone the day before her death.
You know, in moments under stress, I can't recall everything.
So let me ask you about this injury here. So did this come from the wall or did that come from work?
Is that an injury?
Right here.
I don't know if
Or how about this injury here, Mr. Melton? How would you get this injury on the top of your hand going in this direction from punching sheetrock?
that even appears. Oh yes, when you punch through walls, you got to pull your hand back. I'm punching into a wall, pulling my hand back, punching through a wall, and even at work, I have nicks, cuts, and even burns from soldering pipes and hot materials. I can't tell if that's an injury from hitting something or an injury from work, and it may look like that. Even looks like it could be even a slight solder. I bet that's hard to say. I mean, it's hard for me to assess that.
But this is the first time in 25 years that you've ever made the statement that these injuries were from work. Would you agree?
I've never been asked the question as far as if they're from.
And just to make sure we're on
that I can recall.
Just to make sure we're on the same page. Your exact statement was to law enforcement is the injuries. Matter of fact, we don't even have to go to law enforcement. Your exact statement in the court before these jurors was that these injuries came from punching the wall in your apartment. Do you recall making that statement?
Was this prior to being shown pictures?
Mr. Melton, do you recall making that statement?
Yes, I had injuries from my hands from hitting the wall. That's what I recall.
But when I asked you about the injuries, you are now saying that they are from plumbing and hitting the wall. Is that right?
Well, when you're pointing out specific things, like I do have from plumbing, you're going to have nicks and cuts or whatnot from that.
My question is, during my examination of you, this is your first time saying that these injuries are from plumbing. That's a yes or no question, if you can.
Since you just asked that question, I guess I would have to say yes. And
And once the jurors finish looking at the photos, we'll go over some other photos as well. Now, on the day of Tyra's death, you voluntarily went to the Athens-Clarke County Police Department.
That's correct.
And I believe the state asked you a couple of times, did you hire a lawyer or did you refuse to speak to him? When you agree as the boyfriend, if you refuse to speak to him, you would look even more guilty?
Restate the question.
Sure. The state asked you on direct examination multiple times about whether or not you got a lawyer or whether or not you refused to talk to him. Do you recall being asked that question?
Yes.
Okay. When you agree as Miss Baker's boyfriend, you would look more suspicious if you refuse to talk to law enforcement.
If I refused.
Okay.
Yeah, okay.
So we agree on that. Is that right?
Of course. I mean, I'm always wanting to be cooperative.
Sure. But that was a yes to my question, right?
Yes.
Okay. You would also agree you would look more suspicious if you refuse to give blood. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. You would look more suspicious if you refuse to give hair. Is that right?
Correct.
You would look suspicious if you refuse to talk to him. Is that correct?
Correct.
Now, you conducted an interview with Officer Bill Ricketts on the 19th. Do you recall that interview?
I believe so.
Now, you state you believe so. Are you certain that you remember conducting?
Yes, I remember an interview on the 19th.
And your father was present with you during that interview. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. And he sat with you for the entire interview?
Yes.
Okay. And during that interview is when you told law enforcement that you were at your parents' home at 7:15 on January 19th. Is that correct?
Yes.
Do you recall during that interview being asked how would you describe you and Miss Baker's relationship?
Yes.
And your response was that she was your borderline fiance.
I recollect.
Okay. And you advised him that you and Miss Baker were very serious at the time of her death.
Yes.
And I believe you established with the state that the truck you used for work at the time of Miss Baker's death was your own work truck, the truck you purchased. Is that right?
Correct.
Now let's talk about Josh McCourty. The state asked you about your relationship with Josh, and you stated that he was just a coworker that you met at McCart Plumbing. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. Josh stays less than a mile away from your home. Is that correct?
Correct.
Josh knew where you lived. Is that right?
Yes, he worked for me.
Okay. You knew where he lived?
Once we became coworkers.
And you two attended the same high school?
That I'm unsure of.
You're unsure if you attended the same high school with someone you stated was your employee, Mr. Melton?
That's correct.
But to law enforcement, you only identified Josh McCourty as somebody that you worked with. Is that right?
Correct.
Now, you stated on direct examination that while at Nash Plumbing, you loaded up supplies. Is that fair to say?
Correct.
Okay, but at no time did you provide law enforcement with any documents related to your employment at Nash Plumbing. Is that right?
That's correct.
So in regards to your alibi that you were at Nash Plumbing at 7:30 through 7:45, we just have to take your word for it. Is that correct?
I would say so at that point.
And law enforcement did, in fact, just take your word for it. Is that right?
I'm not sure. I would say to my knowledge.
Sure. Now, you stated after leaving, today you stated after leaving Nash Plumbing, you went to the bank.
Correct.
Okay. And did you go over that with the state when you all met?
I knew when I had gone to the bank, but yes.
Okay. And you all discussed your timeline before you came to testify here today?
I had gone over it, a refresher.
On January 19th, 2001, when law enforcement asked you what were you doing that day, you told law enforcement that after leaving Nash Plumbing, you went to Truck Customs.
On the 19th, yes, I did say that.
And you advised law enforcement that you arrived at Truck Customs around 9:30 or maybe earlier. Is that right?
Not earlier, probably 9:30ish, but 10.
Mr. Melton, this isn't the first time that you've had the opportunity to discuss your whereabouts on January 19, 2001. Is that correct?
I have been questioned in the past.
Okay. And
several times.
and you told do you recall making the statement, Truck Customs spelled with the K, Truk, Kustom, and you were asked, okay, and do you know about what time it was? You made the statement, first time was about early 9:30, maybe earlier. Do you recall making that statement?
That seems fair.
So at some point you leave Truck Customs, is that correct?
That's correct.
And I'm sorry, Mr. Melton, do you still have that marker I gave you? All right, perfect. Can you write Truck Customs on that under the bank and the time that you were at Truck Customs? And you can say right there, Mr. Melton, if you're comfortable, you can write the time next to Truck Customs. Okay, so now it's not 9:30, it is 10 o'clock. Okay, let's do 9:30 through 10, just to make sure that's accurate for the jury.
And Judge, I would ask that if there are going to be questions asked, that the witness be allowed to return to the witness stand so he can speak into the microphone.
I think that makes sense. So everyone can hear, including Ms. Satterfield. So you may have a seat and answer any questions in front of the microphone. Go ahead.
So at some point you would agree that you leave Truck Customs, is that fair?
That's correct.
Okay. And when you leave Truck Customs, you go to Grayson, Georgia, correct?
Correct. I go to Grayson.
Now, and you can write Grayson on the board for us, please. All right. So do you recall speaking with Detective Ricketts 2 days later on January 21st, 2001?
Yes.
And would you have any reason to disagree that January 21st, 2001 was a Sunday?
No.
During your second interview, you advised Detective Ricketts that you stopped by the bank. Is that correct?
Yes. Then I had failed to mention that I went by the bank that morning. Yes.
And you stated that you were in the bank for a total of 35 minutes. Is that right?
Sounds about right.
Okay. Next to bank, can you put 35 MIN and circle it? Just you put it there. That's fine. Now, during your second interview, do you recall Detective Ricketts coming to you and telling you that he went to speak with someone at Truck Customs?
Yes.
Okay. And in response, before he could tell you what he learned, you would agree that you changed your answer about the time that you went to Truck Customs. Is that correct?
I'm not sure. Not.
Do you recall making a statement? It's like before 12. I mean, it was probably 10:30, 11:30. Do you recall making that statement?
I don't recall the statements, but yeah, I would say, I mean, I would say, okay. Yeah. Yes.
Yes or no, Mr. Melton? Do you recall making that statement?
I'll say yes. Yeah. Yes.
So is it fair to say that the actual time is between 10 a.m. and 11:30 on the 19th, based on your statement?
As far as being at Truck Customs,
Yes, sir.
and you stated what you did say. What did you just say? I'm sorry.
Would it be fair to say that the actual time of being at Truck Customs is sometime between 10 a.m. and 11:30 a.m.?
That's pretty broad, but yeah, I would say, okay, it would fit in there.
Now, during the January 21st, 2001 interview, you were told for the first time that Ms. Baker was sexually assaulted. Is that fair?
Can you repeat the question?
Sure. During the January 21st, 2001 interview, you were told that Tara was probably sexually assaulted.
I don't recall being told at that point. I had been told Adam, Tara's brother, had called me that morning and had kind of informed me that this is what we're looking at, that they had been informed.
So let me ask the question again. On January 21st, 2001, you knew that Tara had been sexually assaulted. Is that right?
At that day, yes, I had been informed that day.
Now, law enforcement also informed you of that. Do you recall?
I don't recall.
Would hearing the recording refresh your recollection?
I would say if I heard it, it would help reflect. Yes.
Your Honor, I'd ask to refresh this witness's recollection outside the presence of the jury.
Right, and this is a good time for a restroom break, so I'm going to send you all into the jury room. This will be a good restroom break, so we'll take a little bit of time. Please don't discuss the case. And we're going to take a break as well.
Yes, ma'am. Do you want me to wait before I plead after the break?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
I think that would be best.
All right, just for purposes of the record, let the record reflect that the last question asked to Mr. Melton was during the January 21, 2001 interview. I'm going to state it how I said it. You were told that Tara was probably sexually assaulted. At this time, we're refreshing his recollection. We're playing Chris Melton's January 21st, 2001 recorded interview. Minute mark 11:51 to 12:02 for purposes of refreshing Mr. Melton's recollection. Hi, Mr. Melton, I'd like you to listen to this and let me know if your memory is refreshed. If you need to hear any other portions of it, I don't mind playing, okay?
The bottomless and that kind of blood people there, they take it, store it, put in evidence, and then on Monday morning, we've got a good working relationship. They'll start right away for us and tell us exactly what we've got. Did their thing Saturday, and of course on the weekend there's none of the bottomless and that kind of blood people there. They take it, store it, put in evidence, and then on Monday morning, we've got a good working relationship. They'll start right away for us and tell us exactly what we've got. Taylor was probably sexually assaulted.
Call me and tell that, Mr. Melton.
Yes, sir.
Your Honor, the witness's recollection has been refreshed.
All right.
I am ready for the jury to come.
All right. Could you bring the jury in, please, sir? Thank you. You all may be seated. Mr. Cruz, you have the floor.
Thank you, Your Honor. Now, Mr. Melton, during the January 21st, 2001 interview, you were told that Tara was probably sexually assaulted. Is that correct?
Correct.
All right. You would agree that you didn't start crying. Is that correct?
Correct.
You didn't become upset. Is that correct?
I would say not correct.
You said that's incorrect.
Incorrect.
Did you make outward expressions of anger?
No.
You didn't say you needed a moment to yourself, right?
Correct.
You didn't even say, I hope you find who did this before I do, did you?
Correct.
Instead, you asked calmly, did you find some stuff on her like semen? Is that right?
Correct.
Now, at the conclusion of the January 21st, 2001 interview, and I believe you've seen the photographs of your hands, pictures were taken of your hands. Is that right?
Correct.
Okay. And I think I have a better version of those hand photos I would like to show you. This is going to be marked as Defense Exhibit 41. There are 13 photos in Defense Exhibit 31. It will be a omnibus exhibit, photos or better quality photos of Mr. Melton's hands. While the state is reviewing the same, Your Honor, I'd just like to clarify the record. With Defense Exhibit 29, there are
Sorry, say that again.
just for purposes of clarifying the record, for Defense Exhibit 29, there are 9 photos collectively in Defense Exhibit 29. Let the record reflect that I'm showing Mr. Melton the 13 photos of his hands marked as Defense Exhibit 41. You would agree that Defense Exhibit 41 is the same thing you saw in Defense Exhibit 29. Well, let me change that. Please forgive me. You'd agree that Defense Exhibit 41 are photographs of your hands. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, and a little bit better quality than Defense Exhibit 29. Would you agree?
I would agree.
Okay. And those photos are a fair and accurate depiction of your hands as they were on January 21st, 2001. Is that right?
Correct.
Okay. Your Honor, I would move to introduce Defense Exhibit 41 and the 13 photos included into evidence.
Any objection?
No objection, Judge.
They are admitted.
Okay. Thank you, Your Honor. Now, after the photographs were taken of your hands, while at the hospital, you did a blood draw as well. Is that correct?
Correct.
And you remember giving that blood draw. Is that right?
Correct.
Okay. And that's January 21st, 2001.
Correct.
Okay. After you were asked for hair and blood in January, your parents told you they're going after you, Chris. Do you recall them making that statement to you?
Yes.
You discussed with the state the photograph you were shown of Miss Baker to identify her body. Do you recall us talking about that?
Earlier?
Hmm?
When you showed me?
Correct.
Unfortunately, yes.
Okay. And you stated that was not the photo that was shown to you to identify her body. Is that right?
I don't believe so.
Okay.
Go
ahead, Mr. Melton.
I was looking through a digital camera with a small frame, and it was fuzzy, and it's hard to... Anyway, it's not as high quality as what you're showing here, but no.
But we could agree she had a sheet over her body. Is that right?
I believe she had something draped across her. It was at the bottom frame of the digital image.
All right. So I asked you this question. Do you remember telling law enforcement that the photo shown of you, Miss Baker, had a blanket covering her from the neck down? So I saw her face and her hair.
Correct.
And the photo I showed you was a photo of Miss Baker with a sheet covering her from the face down, the neck down, and you saw her face and her hair. Is that right?
Correct.
Okay,
Correct.
But we can agree you did not see a black cord wrapped around Miss Baker's neck. Is that fair to say?
That's fair to say.
Do you recall a police officer interviewing you about you telling Mrs. Virginia Baker that you saw a black cord wrapped around Miss Baker's neck?
Not a black cord wrapped around her neck. No, I don't recall that.
You don't recall?
I do recall in the original photo that I saw, there was something draped over her, and I could recall seeing something black. I didn't know what it was. But like I say, I don't think that's even the image I saw.
So, Mr. Melton, we're speaking the specific question I'm asking you, and you might have answered. I just want to make sure I'm clear. In the photograph you saw, Miss Baker, it was her with a sheet from the neck down. Do we agree on that?
The one you showed me, yes.
Okay, not the one I showed you, the one you described to law enforcement.
I believe I stated there was something from, I don't know if I said sheet, but in the digital camera at the bottom section of the frame, it kind of stopped. You could kind of see something laying there.
Sure, Your Honor. Mark, I moved to mark the audio recording of Chris Melton with Detective Newton as defense exhibit 42.
Mr. Cruz.
Yes, sir. And just to make sure we're on the same page before I play this, law enforcement asked you, do you remember how much of her was exposed during that, in that picture that you saw? Your response was, they had a blanket covering from the neck down, so I saw her face and her hair, You were asked, okay, you couldn't see any of her body or body parts. Your response was, no, I did not see any of her body. You don't recall making that statement?
I recall.
Now, you testified on direct that this was just a terrible experience for you. It destroyed you. Is that fair to say?
Yes, sir.
And you and I both could agree Miss Baker's death is a true tragedy.
Yes, sir.
Okay. On Thursday, January 25th, 2001, you went to Miss Ashley Peavy's house. Is that correct?
What's the dates?
January 25th, 2001.
Yes, sir.
Okay. And this is 6 days after Miss Baker's death.
Okay. Yes, sir.
Okay. And while at Miss Peavy's home on the 25th, which we've agreed is 6 days after Miss Baker's death, you called Miss Leah Tucker. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And it was after 8:15 p.m. It was nighttime. Is that fair to say?
I can recall the time.
That's fair. But you set up a dinner with Miss Tucker at 5:30 p.m. the next day. Do you recall that?
I don't recall that, but it sounds, she was a close past friend. Yes.
All right. And then on January 26th, despite your future fiance being brutally murdered, you called Holly Hufford. Would you agree with that?
I don't remember a Holly Hufford, but I do recall someone that was hurting, like as in anguish, but I don't recall who Holly Hufford is.
You remember somebody else hurting and being in anguish?
Everybody around us.
But you set up a lunch with Holly Hufford for Friday the 26th.
I don't recall.
Okay. But we can agree it wasn't Miss Holly Hufford's fiance that died. It was your fiance, right?
That's correct.
Do you recall Miss Ashley Peavy Hall joining you and Miss Hufford for lunch?
I remember us joining for lunch with someone. If this is Holly, okay, yes.
Okay. And during that lunch, you were flirting with Miss Hufford 7 days after your fiance had been brutally murdered.
Reflected? Is that what you asked?
Flirted.
No.
You did not?
No.
During that lunch, you were gently rubbing Miss Hufford's lower back.
No, I recall this individual having an emotional moment describing what she was going through. And I realized this person was in pain. And I reached over and I believe I did like a comforting touch to just acknowledge that it's okay. They're not okay, but to have her understand that we're all going through this and it's going to be okay.
Would you be surprised if Miss Hufford said that she was shocked by your actions during the lunch?
I would be surprised.
After lunch, Miss Ashley P.V. Hall and Chris Hall, they left. Do you recall that?
I say vaguely, okay.
Do you recall telling them that you were going to continue hanging out with Holly?
This is a long time ago. I don't really recall this, but it would sound like someone who was, yes, that I would try to comfort, not flirt with or try to set up a date or anything. No.
Well, let me ask you this. On January 27, 2001, isn't it true you tried to comfort Miss Hufford at 10 p.m. at 10 p.m.?
How so?
Did you contact Miss Hufford after 10 p.m. on January 27, 2001?
I could believe I could have made a phone call.
Do you think it's appropriate to call women at past 10 p.m. at night after you just lost your fiance?
I'm going to object to the form of the question argumentative.
Sustained.
Yes, ma'am. Didn't you invite Miss Holly Hufford out on the town when you called her past 10 p.m. that night?
Honestly, I don't recall the conversation.
Now, again, we discussed you told this jury how much Miss Baker meant to you, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. Do you recall discussing with law enforcement Miss Baker's law school memorial service that was held shortly after her death?
Yes.
And that discussion occurred on June 20th, 2001.
Okay. I'm not sure at the time.
Do you have any reason to disagree that it occurred on June 20th?
No.
Instead of attending Miss Baker's law school memorial service, you went to a country concert, correct?
Correct.
And you knew about the memorial service 4 days before the concert, is that correct?
Correct.
And your stated reason for not going to your fiance's candlelight vigil was because another woman talked you into going into a concert with her. Is that correct?
Correct. Can I give further explanation?
Well, I have a question for you. That woman was Lauren Sherling.
I think the witness is asking for some direction.
Right. Well, and I think the record needs to reflect the witness was asking the court a question, which is not necessarily appropriate, but based on the state's interjection, I will say this with regard to all witnesses. All witnesses must answer the question if they can, yes or no, and they are entitled to explain. And so I'll let you ask the question again. And if this witness has the opportunity to explain, feels he needs to, he is allowed to by law. But you may ask the question again, Mr. Cruz.
Yes, ma'am. He answered my question, Your Honor. So the question I do have for you is that woman was Lauren.
Object, Your Honor. I think that the witness is allowed to explain his answer.
And I would ask you to go back to the former question, Mr. Cruz, and we'll go from there.
Yes, ma'am.
All right, go ahead, sir.
The question that I asked you, Mr. Melton, your reason for not going to the candlelight visual was because another woman talked you into going to the concert.
No, that's not accurate.
Okay. That woman was Lauren Sherling.
That is accurate.
Okay.
Can I explain? Do I have the opportunity? Do I?
All witnesses are allowed to answer yes or no and explain their answer if they choose to do so.
Okay. Well, I'd choose to explain. Lauren was one of Tara's closest friends that loved Tara. She worked with her at the law firm in Athens. That's how they met. They became very close. Along the way, we all became close. We were all extremely grieving. There was a time that we did not see each other as far as physically in proximity, but she would reach out periodically and check in to see how I was doing. She was a very dear friend. She is one of the only few that actually would reach out to see how I was feeling, and then we would converse and we would talk about our feelings of the situation. At the time of this Vigil. I did not know anybody at the law firm. I was grieving. I also was feeling extraordinarily uncomfortable with any presence I was of anybody that knew the situation. I would walk in to any room or any environment, and then people would separate, create distance, look at me with angry eyes. So I did not feel comfortable being there. As much as I wanted to show respect, as much as respect as I had.
Overruled.
So with that being said, Lauren had an opportunity when she called me. She had an opportunity to create in a different environment for myself. She said, maybe you need a different headspace. Come out and try to enjoy something. And so she invited me along with her group of friends, and she had had these tickets for an extended period of time. And she had one, and she says, if you want to join us and try to get a different headspace, maybe this environment will make you feel better. And so I accepted, and genuinely, it did make me feel better.
So to my question in regards to, and your reason for not going to the candlelight vigil was because another woman talked you into going into a concert with her. Your answer was no. Is that right?
You stated that she talked me into going. She didn't. She heard me through, and I believe that it's more of she gave me permission to accept that it's okay, Chris. It's okay that you can try to do something to feel better about your situation.
Let me ask you this, Mr. Melton. I think you and I could agree you're a very charismatic person. Have you heard that before?
Yes,
Okay. Is this the way you were talking with law enforcement when they were interviewing you?
I wasn't aware if I was. I mean, this is my demeanor.
Sure. When the state and yourself was going over your testimony, is this how you were talking with the state as well?
I'm unaware. I mean, this is who I am.
But I would like you to answer my question with a yes or a no. Okay.
Okay, I'll try my best.
The reason you didn't go to the candlelight visual is because Miss Sherling told you you shouldn't go. Is that a better way to put it?
No,
Mr. Melton, this isn't your first time discussing the candlelight visual, is it?
it's been discussed with a detective.
Okay. And your statement was, or do you recall making the statement, and which even Lauren didn't go to that when she was part of that. Even the people she worked with were going to be speaking there at the memorial service. And they suggested to her that she shouldn't come, and I talked to her about it, and she's like, it's not something you want to be at, Chris. It's just gonna, not trying to talk me out of it, just trying to tell me how the situation is going to be. But I didn't go to that. Is that accurate?
If that's on a recording and you have it verbatim, but I don't
My question is that accurate? Yes or no?
I don't think it's completely accurate.
I move to introduce defense exhibit June 20th, 2001 audio recording between Mr. Melton and law enforcement. Now I ask the Honorable Court to introduce time stamped. And we're 425 to 455, Your Honor.
Did you have a number of that exhibit?
Defense exhibit 43.
43. And I'm sorry, say it one more time, the time stamp.
4 minutes and 25 seconds to 4 minutes and 55 seconds.
All right, thank you. And you're asking to introduce that?
Just that portion, correct.
All right. Any objection, Mr. Yellman-Chili?
There's been no foundation laid for the recording, Judge. So that is our objection based on foundation.
All right, I'll sustain that objection. Allow you to lay a foundation, Mr.
Sure. You recall talking to law enforcement in regards to going to a country concert with Lauren Sherling. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. And you hadn't heard this audio recording. Would you like to hear this audio recording?
In the section that you're referring to, I would say yes.
Okay, perfect. So, Your Honor, this is what I would ask. I would ask if I could allow the witness outside the presence of the jury to listen to that portion of the recording to determine if he recognizes that recording, Your Honor.
All right, any objection, Mr. Yellman-Chili?
No, Judge.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, I'll have you leave for a moment. Don't discuss the case. This is another break, and we will take a lunch break. Don't worry. We'll be back with you shortly. Thank you.
Yeah, of course, Judge, I'm gonna have to put it on a flash drive that the disc isn't playing for me.
All right.
Is that okay?
Are you able to do that? I mean, all right. How long does that take?
45 seconds.
Oh, great. Okay.
All right, Mr. Melton, I am playing minute mark 425 through 455.
Today was probably before the concert, in which even Lauren didn't go to that when she was a part of that. Even the people she worked with were going to be speaking there at the more service, and they suggested to her that she shouldn't come. And I talked to her about it, and she's like, "It's not something that you want to be at, Chris. It's just going to not trying to talk me out of it, but just trying to tell me how the situation's going to be." But I didn't go to that, and we discussed. I even talked to Lauren about it the night before, just discussing if I should go to that instead of the concert. And saying, "Hey, you know, I feel I should be there too." And she's like, "Well," she told me what the people at the law firm told her what it's going to be.
Did you hear that?
Yes, sir.
That refresh your recollection?
Yes, sir.
Said it's been the recording.
Yes, sir.
Ready for the jury? All right. Could you bring the jury in, please? You all may be seated. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. You would agree that you and Ms. Sherling agreed to go to the country concert over going to Miss Baker's candlelight vigil. Is that correct?
Correct.
Now, at this concert that you went with Miss Sherling, that you went with Miss Sherling to, there was a total of 6 people. Is that correct?
Sounds accurate.
Okay. It was Miss Sherling's mother and father. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. It was her neighbors, which was a guy and a girl couple.
Yes, sir.
Okay. And this was a country concert at Turner Field.
Correct.
Okay. So you and Miss Sherling left Athens when Miss Baker is having a candlelight visual to travel to Atlanta to go to a country concert.
I don't remember where we left from. I don't recall that. But I do recall going to a concert, and it was in an open stadium, and you got to walk around and listen to country music.
You remember that, but you don't remember whether Miss Baker told you she was going to be along the day before she died.
I didn't object to asked and answered. Judge.
Sustained.
Chris, the week before Tara died, there was an incident between you and her that jeopardized your relationship with her. Do you remember that?
I remember being asked about the question.
Do you remember the incident?
I remember nothing happening the week before, but I had answered a question to a detective. And I remember telling there was an incident that always stayed in the forefront of my mind that I realized that I had hurt her feelings, but I didn't realize at that time the question was the week before, because the incident that I explained happened months before.
All right, so your testimony today, Mr. Melton, is the incident that occurred before Miss Baker died was actually an incident that occurred months before Miss Baker died.
Where he had asked, he goes, has there ever been a time that you felt that something you had done jeopardized your relationship? I think that's close to accurate, but my answer that I gave was off the forefront of my mind that it had always stayed there, but it did not happen the week before. I stated that in questioning, but it was not the week before.
I just want to make sure we're clear on the question that I asked, okay? The week before Miss Baker's death, there was an incident between you and her that jeopardized you two's relationship.
No, sir.
This isn't the first time you've been asked that question, is it?
No, sir.
On June 20th, 2001, law enforcement asked you that question. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And your statement to law enforcement was, yes, I remember that incident. Is that correct?
No, I remember I started telling about an incident.
Your Honor, I would ask to play minute mark 621 through 650, defense exhibit 43.
Any objection, Mr. Yeldon?
43 in evidence?
Correct. Well, we did the timestamp is,
That one time, well,
and forgive me if I didn't move to
not in evidence.
Please forgive me.
It is not in evidence. So is there an objection to, and we can talk about that later. Let's talk about the request that Mr. Cruz has just made. Do you have an objection to what he has just requested?
Just a foundation, Your
Okay,
Honor.
I will sustain that objection and allow you to lay a foundation. Mr.
Okay. And you've already stated that you remember talking to law enforcement about that. Is that right?
I do.
Okay. And you two specifically discussed the incident between you and Tara the week before she died. Is that right?
He asked the question, but I'm not hearing it correctly at the time. It was an incident that had happened in the past, but not the week before. But he does ask that question.
So let me do it this way. Did you admit to law enforcement that an incident occurred with you and Miss Baker the week before her death?
I would have to say yes, but it wasn't accurate.
Well, we can't have it both ways. First, you said it was months ago.
I'm going to object about editorializing about the witness's answers.
I'm going to sustain that objection.
Sure.
Mr. Cruz, just stick to your question.
Yes, ma'am. Your original answer was that this incident was months ago. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. But your answer now is you do remember the incident the week before she passed away.
I remember the question he asked, but and what I had described did not happen the week before.
But you told law enforcement it happened the week before.
He asked the question, and I gave an answer, but it was not the week before.
My specific... Oh, go ahead. I didn't mean to cut you off.
I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, you're fine. My specific question is, did you tell law enforcement that the incident happened the week before her death?
He asked that question, and I did not say that it happened the week before. I went into an explanation of what, in my forefront of my mind, had at some point jeopardized our relationship.
Your Honor, I would renew my request to introduce minute marks 621 through 650 into evidence as a prior inconsistent statement.
Mr. Yalman-Chile.
Well, there are a lot of questions. None of them had to do with the foundation for the exhibit, however, which was my objection.
I think that's correct. So I'll sustain the objection, allow you to lay a foundation, Mr.
You haven't heard what's on this flash drive, have you?
On the flash drive?
Right. You haven't heard what's on this flash drive, correct?
I don't know what's on your flash drive.
Let me ask you this. Did the state play your interviews for you?
I have heard the interviews.
They played them for you?
I have heard the interviews.
Okay. So you're familiar with your interviews with law enforcement, is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. And you are familiar with the interview that took place where you discussed with law enforcement the incident that took place the week before her death, is that right?
Yes, I'm familiar with that question.
Okay. And the reason you're familiar with it is because you've heard the interview, correct?
Well, I'm familiar with the question from originally, plus after 25 years, I think it's fair to say that I need to hear what I said on recording.
So you would like to hear it to determine if it's a fair and accurate rendition of your statements to law enforcement on June 20th, 2001?
I would like to hear to see if it's accurately depicting your question, because you say, did I state, and in my explanation, that it actually happened the week before. The question he asked was, did it happen? He goes, what happened? Or was there anything the week before that could have jeopardized your relationship? And then I go into an explanation of something that was always on the forefront of my mind because I hurt her feelings, and it did not happen the week before. But I did not explain to them it did not happen the week before. I just went into an explanation of something that I was recollecting.
Okay. I'm going to allow you to hear what's on this flash drive, Defense Exhibit 43. Your Honor, I would ask, and I apologize to everybody, I would ask that I have the opportunity to lay the proper foundation for this flash drive with Mr. Melton outside the presence of the jury.
All right, we will do that. Ladies and gentlemen, if you'll go into the jury room, don't discuss the case. We'll be with you shortly. You all may be seated. Thank you. So, Mr. Cruz, let me just make sure for the record, are you trying to refresh this witness's record?
No, I am not. I am laying the foundation for impeachment. I just want to lay the foundation that he recognizes this exhibit. I think that's the only piece that's missing.
So are you trying to lay the foundation for a prior inconsistent statement?
Correct.
Okay. All right. Go ahead.
May I, Your Honor?
You may.
Okay, thank you. Let the record reflect that I'm playing for Mr. Melton. Minute mark 613 through minute mark 649 for the purpose of laying the foundation for this audio.
anybody now.
No, I don't, even if,
Another thing was, or issue, kind of, we'll call it an issue until we hear from you, was brought up to us. Something to the effect that like a week prior to Tara's death, Tara had found out some information could have maybe jeopardized y'all's relationship. Do you remember having a discussion? I think this was,
something that she might have found at your apartment in Athens.
I think she went there to leave you a note or something.
Yeah, I know it was.
Okay. How about
Did you have opportunity to hear that, Mr. Melton?
Yes, it did.
Okay, is that you on the audio recording?
Yes, it is.
Okay, is the minute 6 minutes and 13 seconds to 6 minutes and 49 seconds? Is that an accurate portion of your conversation with law enforcement?
Yes.
Okay, you recognize this audio recording as the conversation you had with law enforcement on June 20th, 2001. Is that fair?
Yes.
Does it sound like it's been altered in any way?
No.
Your Honor, I believe the proper foundation has been laid for the audio recording. I'd ask that the jury be allowed to come back in.
All right. Thank you. Mr. Yelmichili, do you have an objection?
I think at this point, the foundation has been laid. However, I did not hear a prior inconsistent statement. It's exactly what Mr. Melton said, which is that he got asked the question and then he launched into an explanation of what happened without correcting the date. So there may be something beyond this that Mr. Cruz wants to play that shows the inconsistency, but I believe, as far as what I heard, Judge, it was exactly what Mr. Melton testified to, which is that, yes, in response to that question about a date certain, I started to launch into an explanation about the only incident that I could think of, but it is not actually from that date, and I didn't clarify that for law enforcement, which seems to be what happens on the recording, but obviously the court heard the recording as well and can draw its own conclusions.
Mr. Cruz, any response
That's
to Yelmichili's comments?
absolutely, that's a misrepresentation. Law enforcement clearly asked him if he was aware of an incident that occurred the week before Tara's death, and Mr. Melton, before I cut the recording off, said, yes, I'm aware of that incident. My specific question to him was, Mr. Melton, was there incident? Well, my specific question to Mr. Melton was, Chris, the week before Tara, there was an incident that upset her and jeopardized your relationship with her. Do you remember that? His first answer was no. It was months ago that it happened. And eventually we got to him saying, well, I just told law enforcement that it was. I confronted him with the statement, Your Honor, I would ask that I'm allowed to impeach Mr. Melton with a prior inconsistent statement because Mr. Melton danced around the answer. He wouldn't give me a clean yes or no.
I'm going to ask you to play it again because I did not hear what you're articulating.
Yes,
So I'd
ma'am.
like to hear it again, please.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
another thing was, or issue, kind of, we'll call it an issue until we hear from you, was brought up to us. Something to the effect that like a week prior to Tara's death, Tara had found out some information that upset her and could have maybe jeopardized y'all's relationship. Do you remember having a discussion?
All right, thank you. That's what I thought I heard. So I think that we are at a moment, the interpretation of semantics.
Sure.
But I do think semantics matter
Yes,
in
ma'am.
this moment. And what the officer just said, which is why I needed you to repeat it, was that something happened the week before where Ms. Baker had learned of something. And that is a different set of words and a different phrase than what you're asking Mr. Melton. And so based on that recording and based on the questions that you are asking Mr. Melton, that's not a prior inconsistent statement. You certainly may continue questioning him, but that does not qualify as a prior inconsistent statement. If there's more context, for example, in that recording
Sure.
that supports the way that you have asked the question, we certainly can get into that. But this particular thread that you have played very specifically says when she learned of something, and that is different than what you've asked.
Yes, ma'am. That's fair. We could bring the jury out. I've played it. He's laid the foundation for the recording. I'll ask the appropriate question, and depending on his response, we'll take the next steps.
All right. You may bring the jury out. Thank you. Y'all may be seated. Thank you. Mr. Cruz?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, Your Honor. Mr. Melton, do you recall law enforcement asking you that like a week prior to Tara's death, Tara had found out some information that upset her and could have maybe jeopardized your relationship? Do you remember having that discussion? Is that
Yes,
accurate?
they asked that question.
Sir?
Yes,
And you were told, I think she went there to leave you a note or something. Do you recall that?
I recall them saying yes,
Okay. And your response was, yeah, I know what it was.
yes,
You'd agree that you never disclosed that information to law enforcement until you were asked about it 5 months after her death. Is that correct?
that's correct.
You never shared with law enforcement the issue that led to Miss Baker not spending Christmas of 2000 with you, did you? Or Christmas Eve. Let me use the right date. Christmas Eve of 2000 with you. Is that correct?
I believe we were together Christmas Eve.
Your testimony here today is that you and Miss Baker were together on Christmas Eve?
Portion of the day, I believe so.
You never shared with law enforcement the reason why Miss Baker did not spend New Year's with you, did you?
Tara did spend New Year's. She spent New Year's Eve with me into New Year's Day. Yes,
You never shared with law enforcement the reason Miss Baker stopped calling you the week of December 27th to January 3rd, despite being home. Is that correct?
what were the dates you just said?
December 27th to January 3rd, 2001.
I don't recall.
You never shared with law enforcement that Miss Baker told you that she needed space to focus on her studies 2 weeks before she died, did you?
Are you asking me? I'm sorry.
Sure.
There's a lot of questions.
You would agree that you never shared with law enforcement that Miss Baker told you that she needed space to focus on her studies 2 weeks before her death.
I'd agree.
And you also never shared with law enforcement that the day before Tara was murdered, that was the most that you two had spoken in the previous 2 months.
I don't know about that now. No, as far as did I say, I'm sorry, repeat your question. I'll
Sure.
make sure I understand you correctly.
You would agree that you never shared with law enforcement that the day before Miss Baker was murdered, that was the most that you two had spoken in the previous 2 months over the phone. I left that portion out, so please forgive me. Over the phone.
Okay. No, I don't believe I discussed that with the police. I wasn't really aware.
Would you have any reason to disagree that before Miss Baker died, others believed that it was clear that your relationship with Miss Baker was over?
It wouldn't be apparent or aware to me, no.
Let's discuss your dating history with Miss Baker. Is that fair?
Fair?
Okay. When you met Miss Baker, you two were in Milledgeville. Is that right?
Correct?
You two were in college.
Correct?
Okay. And you were a pre-med major. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And pre-med majors are typically aiming for medical school.
Correct.
Okay? And Miss Baker wanted to become a lawyer.
That's correct.
Eventually, Miss Baker graduated from college. Is that right?
That's correct.
And she moved to Athens. Is that correct?
When she at some point, when she graduated, she moved home.
Yes, sir. But eventually she moved to Athens. Is that right?
Correct.
Okay. And you would agree after Miss Baker moved to Athens, you followed her to Athens.
Correct.
Let me frame it this way. You didn't graduate from college. Is that correct? You didn't get your pre-med degree. Is that right?
That's correct.
Now, for your living arrangements in Athens, you rented a empty bedroom in Chase Guerin's apartment. Is that right?
Correct.
And Chase is someone you actually met through Tara.
Correct.
And for work, while you were staying in Athens, you were driving back and forth daily to Loganville from Athens, Georgia to Loganville and back. Is that fair to say?
Yes.
And you moved to Athens specifically to be close to Miss Baker. Is that right?
Correct.
And when you first moved to Athens, is it fair to say that you and Miss Baker would spend in a 7-day week, you guys would be together about 4 or 5 days?
That's correct. That's pre-law school.
That's pre-law school?
That's before we spent that much time before she started getting in law school and getting more busy. Yes.
So first semester of law school, you weren't spending 4 to 5 days with Miss Baker?
Well, yes, she would come by. Yes.
Okay. And you would go to her house too. Isn't that
Yes.
right?
Yes. Yes.
However, towards the end of December 2000 and January 2001, Miss Baker stopped visiting your home that often. Is that correct?
I still get less time together. Yes.
Okay. And we've already discussed law enforcement talking to you about the incident that happened the week before her death. Would you agree with that?
Asking the question, yes.
Okay.
Go ahead.
And you would also agree that the week before her death is when you decided to go back to your parents' home for work. Is that fair?
Just for work, not to move.
Okay.
But yes,
So I just want to make sure we're clear. So you didn't move away from Athens before Miss Baker's death.
correct.
Okay. So if anybody said otherwise, that information is inaccurate.
Correct. I have not moved.
And due to Miss Baker's studying and your work, the last time you saw Miss Baker was 10 days before she died?
Say it again.
It was 10 days before she died?
What was your full question?
Sure, I apologize. Due to Miss Baker's studying, as well as your work, the last time you saw Miss Baker was 10 days before she died.
Incorrect. The last time that I had stayed in Athens prior to her death would have been the Wednesday prior, but I saw her the weekend prior to her death.
And you saw her at your apartment?
No, she was at my parents'. She came by my parents' house.
And I noticed before you ask questions, you look over here. Is anybody communicating anything to you while you're on the stand?
No, sir.
Now, let me ask you about the question in regards to the 10-day window. You would agree that when law enforcement met with you, you told law enforcement in 2024 that you were certain it had been 10 days since you last saw Miss Baker. Would you agree with that?
I stated that in confusion. Yes, sir.
Okay. But you stated it. It was in confusion, but you stated it.
I stated it.
Okay. And Miss Elizabeth Bigham told you that she had your DNA. Is that right?
At some point, yes.
And she told you that because of the DNA that she had of yours, it could not have been 10 days. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. Ms. Bigham also told you that they need to be able to explain away your DNA. Is that right?
Correct.
And in response to let me ask this question the right way. In response to Ms. Bigham telling you that she needed to explain away your DNA, you continued to tell her that, no, I'm certain it's 10 days since I last saw Miss Baker. Is that right?
I started reflecting, and I do recall being with Tara the weekend before. I have always stated from prior to that I was with her the weekend before. Time had gone by, and confusion had started setting in, and I was reflecting on the last time I had stayed in Athens. But indeed, Tara had come to my house that weekend.
But you didn't say that you had seen her that weekend until Miss Bigham told you that you said that you saw her that weekend back in 2001. Is that right?
That's correct. And other times beyond. Yes, sir.
And Miss Bigham told you that your DNA was found in Miss Baker's mouth. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And she told you the DNA doesn't last that long in her mouth. Is that right?
Correct.
She told you all of this information before you said that, hey, I remember now, I saw Miss Baker the weekend before she passed away. Would you agree with that?
Correct, I would say.
But one thing that you were adamant about with Miss Bigham that she couldn't get you to change, you said, I did not see Tara Baker the week of her death. Is that right?
That's correct.
Okay, so I want to make sure we're clear for the record. You didn't see Miss Baker on Monday. Is that right?
Correct.
It's undisputed that you didn't see Miss Baker on Tuesday. Is that correct?
Correct.
It's undisputed that you didn't see Miss Baker on Wednesday. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And it's undisputed that you didn't see Miss Baker on Thursday.
Correct.
And it's undisputed that you didn't see Miss Baker, you would say you didn't see Miss Baker on Friday.
I think it's undisputed.
So we have Friday, Thursday, Wednesday, Tuesday, Monday. So we'll say at least 5 days, right?
Correct.
Okay. And you told Miss Bigham that the closest time, for the first time, that you believe you saw Miss Baker last or had sexual intercourse with Miss Baker last was the Sunday before she left. Is that right?
Sounds accurate, yes.
Okay. And that was the first time in 24 years that you ever told law enforcement that you had sexual relations with Miss Baker on Sunday.
I think in the past I'd said it in the weekend, and we had sex on Saturday, and then I'm sure that I believe that we had sex on Sunday. It's just, yes.
That's a yes to my question?
I would say yes.
So I won't ask that question. So at the time of Miss Baker's death, you stated today, I believe, that you and Tara, well, I'll ask you, how long had you and Tara been dating at the time of her death?
Again, that would be 2.5 years.
Not 3.5 years?
2.5 years
Not 3.5 years?
from 2.5 to, I think our 2-year anniversary was the July 4th prior. I believe that we considered us actually a couple.
Okay.
Yes,
So we'll say 2.5 years. So in 2.5 years, within that 2-year window, you moved to Athens to be near her. We've agreed on that. Is that right?
correct.
You helped her move into her Deer Park apartment. Is that correct?
Correct.
And at the time she moved into her Deer Park apartment, is it fair to say that you two were in a serious relationship?
Correct.
But Ms. Baker didn't choose to move in an apartment with you. Is that correct?
That is correct.
The day before Ms. Baker died, you would agree that you two spoke 5 times.
Sounds right.
And we've agreed for the past 20 years, you've stated court's indulgence. Now, Mr. Melton, we've already agreed that in 2001, you were advised that Ms. Baker was sexually assaulted. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, you heard it, you testified to it. Is that right?
Correct.
Okay, now you do recall also meeting with GBI again on May 5th, 2024. Is that right?
That's correct.
And during the May 5th, 2024 interview, you were told that someone else's DNA was found in Ms. Baker's mouth. Do you remember that?
That's correct.
Okay, and is it, you were told that it was the bad guy's DNA. Is that right?
That's correct.
You were also told by law enforcement that they did not intend to arrest you. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And they told you that they needed your help explaining away your DNA. Is that right?
They were trying to have an understanding of why the DNA was in their mouth or was in Tara's mouth. So, ask your question again.
Sure. They told you they needed you to explain, they needed to be able to, let me rephrase it. They were asking you to help them explain away your DNA or why your DNA would be present in her mouth.
Yes.
Now, when they told you that there was another DNA profile in Ms. Baker's mouth, your response is,
We approach, please.
May?
it's a little bit more to the.
Oh, okay.
All right. So we've agreed that you were aware that Ms. Baker was sexually assaulted in 2001, right?
Correct.
Okay. And despite this knowledge of her being sexually assaulted at the time of her death, your response was, I'm kind of stunned. I'm hearing there's 2 people, me and somebody else.
There's further description of that. I think they say in her mouth. Yes.
Okay. You make that statement.
And when they said in her mouth, yes.
Would it be shocking that if someone was sexually assaulted by someone else, that they would likely have more than one DNA profile in them? Is that fair to say?
Judge, I'm going to object for calls for speculation.
I'm going to sustain that objection.
In your personal knowledge, okay, if someone, whether by choice or not, is intimate with 2 people, you would expect that 2 people would be present. Is that fair?
If somebody was sexually assaulted, and I'm thinking that if it's in the vagina and around, yes.
No. If it's in the vagina and what? Please finish your statement.
The question was asked. Well, actually, how can I have full explanation of the thoughts that are going through my head at that moment?
If I can ask you this, can you answer my question first and you can explain anything you need to explain?
Fair enough.
Is that fair?
Just restate your question, please.
So I think we agreed on the point that you said you were kind of stunned. I'm hearing that it's 2 people, me and somebody else. We've agreed on that, right?
Yes.
And my follow-up question was, based on your personal knowledge, if someone is sexually assaulted by someone other than yourself, you would expect 2 people to be present. Is that right?
I would say
Sexually assaulted by someone other than yourself, you would expect 2 people to be present. Is that right?
I would say yes, but I do have further explanation of my statement.
Sure. You were asked about your sexual history with Miss Baker. Is that correct?
When can I continue? When can I continue to?
So I can't answer questions. The Honorable Court has only given me
I'm sorry,
authority
I
to ask
didn't
questions.
didn't mean to look that direction. I apologize.
But the question I have for you, you have previously described your sexual relationship with Miss Baker. Is that correct?
Yes,
And that did not include anal intercourse.
that's correct.
And when investigators interviewed you on May 5th, you understood the importance of being truthful. Is that right?
That's correct.
And you understood, and you told them that you and Miss Baker never, ever engaged in anal sex. Is that right?
That's correct.
Okay. And then just a couple of more questions for you, Mr. Melton. I thank you so much for your patience. During direct examination, you talked about items on your hands. I believe you said it was plumber cement, it was solvent. What were the items that were on your hands when you met with police?
When do I get to go back and talk to the other about the other? Refer to the previous question that you had.
So the Honorable Court has only given me authority to ask questions. After this hearing, you and I can discuss it if you would like.
Can I not have an explanation to an answer? Do I have the opportunity to explain a statement? If I'm not, I'm assuming I'm granted that. I'm not sure about the order of the questions that he's stating that Liz and Jeremy had asked me, the order, okay?
Objection, Your Honor, non-responsive to any question that I asked. No question involved the order of questioning
Okay.
by investigators.
The reason,
Right, hang on just a second. What was your question again, Mr. Cruz?
I believe the question, and Mr. Melton can correct me if I'm wrong, that he would like to follow up on was the question in regards to his statement, I'm kind of stunned. I'm hearing there's two people, me and somebody else. And I believe he mentioned about it being in her mouth. And I think he wanted to follow up on that, Your Honor.
All right, well, witnesses are allowed to explain their answers if they answer yes or no. Why don't you ask that question again and see if you get the yes or no question? And if this witness would like to explain his answer, he may do so.
Sure, absolutely. And despite knowing that Ms. Baker was sexually assaulted for 23 years, when you were told that somebody else's DNA was found in her body, your response was, I'm kind of stunned. I'm hearing there's two people, me and somebody else. Is that correct?
correct. Okay, with the explanation. When Liz, they tell me, not that it's in her body, they tell me specifically that it's in her mouth. Okay? In my mind at that point, I'm not accurate about DNA and so forth, timing and so forth, but there was just a short fraction moment of a time. And if I can request to even play that section of the audio, that for just a moment, I was taking consideration that was this voluntary? Because why in the world would she not bite his penis? If somebody tried to do that, why would you not bite his penis? And that's what I was expressing. And I was in shock that it was in her mouth, because for just a fraction of a moment, it kind of went through my head. I was like, was something happening there that I was unaware of with Tara? And I'm ashamed to even think that for a second. And then Liz responds, don't let your head go there.
Objection, hearsay.
It's on the audio recording.
Rejection. That objection.
That's sustained, Mr. Melton, so you can't mention what anybody else said. I would like to follow up on this.
Yeah, okay.
If I could just
Yeah.
on the hearsay objection, Mr. Cruz in this line of questioning has specifically mentioned the words that the GBI agents are saying back and forth to Mr. Melton. So I think as it relates to the rule of completeness in this line of questioning, Mr. Melton is allowed to talk about that because of the fact that Mr. Cruz has opened the door to it in his line of questioning.
Would you like to respond to the objection about the rule of completeness?
I would. So the purpose of my questioning was the objective effect on the listener. So it wouldn't apply as hearsay because they give him information or they make a statement to him. The most important portion of it isn't what's said to him. we aren't offering that for the truth of the matter. We're offering it to the jury for his response. So anytime that I've mentioned something from GBI, it's either been a question that was asked, which is not hearsay because it's not a statement offered for the truth, it's a question, or two, the objective effect on Mr. Melton in regards to how did he respond to that information. The rule of completeness, from what I understand, applies to documents, videos, things that if you only play a portion of it or show a portion of it, it wouldn't put it into context. Now, if the state would like to, well, I won't get into that, but that's my understanding of the rule of completeness. Right now, we're just going through his testimony with non-hearsay statements from law enforcement.
Okay, I'm going to withdraw my former comment that it is hearsay. Both parties have agreed that it is not hearsay. I'm going to allow you to complete your statement. Go ahead.
All right, back to what I was saying.
Now, I didn't agree that his statement was hearsay. His statement was hearsay as far as what Ms. Bigham said. I was explaining my statements.
Well, I'm going to allow him to say
Yes, ma'am.
however you characterize it. I'm going to make a finding that both parties have said it's not hearsay. I'm going to allow you to continue explaining if you choose to do so.
Yes, ma'am. I'd like to continue. There was a moment when I'm going to have to back up just a touch, I guess, but I hear that there's semen in her mouth. I'm expecting it in other places of her body, but in her mouth, I was like, how did she not bite this person? And for just a moment, I was like, was this voluntary? And then I was going the wrong thoughts in my head, and Liz picked up on that also, and she stated something that was beyond my realm of consideration, and she says, that's if Tara was still alive.
You were in her mouth too, is that correct?
It's the DNA, you're saying. Yes, the DNA was located.
Okay.
That's what I've been told.
And I just want to make it very clear for the jury. When you met with law enforcement on May 5th, 2024, you understood that your DNA was in Miss Baker's mouth.
That's what I was told.
Last question I have for you. I want to talk about your hands a little bit. Did you state you punched the wall 30 times?
I stated that I couldn't remember how many times I'd punched it, but I was just guesstimating.
Okay. But you stated that you punched it so hard that shingles were falling off the house?
No, that I was hitting at some point when I came through, I know I hit the siding.
Okay. Did you mention that you were hitting concrete and things of that nature?
Sir?
Did you mention that you hit concrete? Did I hear that?
That's what the siding was made of.
Okay, so you were punching through the wall and hitting concrete?
Yes. I remember I remember punching through and feeling the other side. Yes.
Okay. You would agree that you never told law enforcement that you sought medical treatment for your hands. Is that correct?
That's correct. I never did.
Okay. And you would also agree that you didn't break any bones in your hands. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. You also agree that the injuries to your hand were scratch-like injuries. Is that right?
There were scratch-like injuries on my hand. Yes.
I think we established this. This is my last point. And I believe we've already talked about this and we've agreed on it maybe multiple times. But your hands were covered in work supplies when you went to meet with law enforcement, right?
Yes, I believe there was primer and maybe some glue that was on my hands.
You also mentioned cement as well, plumber cement, I think you stated.
Plumbing cement, it's a possibility. I wasn't completely accurate of all this, but it's primer. I know that sticks to your hands, and then there's probably little pieces of adhesive.
Okay, and I want to ask you something that's very interesting to me, and this is my last question for real.
Mm-hmm.
You refer to the officers by their first names. How many times have you met with them before this trial took place?
That's how they always introduce themselves.
My question is, how many times did you meet with them before this trial?
Before this trial?
Hmm?
When they interviewed me?
Okay. How many times?
I think I've had a total of 5, 6 interviews, I guess.
And that includes with the prosecutors as well?
As far as with the prosecutors, maybe 2.
Okay, so they've met with you a total of 7 times, but they told you that your DNA was present in Miss Baker's dead body. Is that right?
Who's you talking about? Liz and
Correct.
Jeremy?
Correct.
When they interviewed me?
Correct.
They said the DNA was also there. Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Melton. I have no other questions for you.
Any redirect, Mr. Yelman-Chile?
Yes, Your Honor, briefly. Mr. Melton, I've got just, well, I'm not going to call it one question. It might turn into a couple, but just one thing that I wanted to talk to you about, because there's been some testimony about this incident between you and Tara, but there hasn't been any testimony about what that incident was. Can you explain to us, what it is that happened and what this disagreement that y'all had? And I believe you testified it was the only disagreement that you could necessarily recall that was ever serious. What was it?
Just bear with me. There was a time that Tara took care of me. I had gotten an infection. I had cellulitis that had entered my body through my thighs and through my buttocks on a job site late summer. Late summer, I remember it being hot. I had been shaved. I was on a new job site, sitting on the soil, installing plumbing. Well, during that time, evidently bacteria that had been in the soil entered through my clothes, entered my skin, and got me infected. That same day, later that evening, Tara was at my house, and she saw the effects it was having upon my body. And I'd swollen up in between my thighs and my legs, and my skin started turning black. She told me, "You need to go to the emergency room." And she took me to the emergency room. Once that was taken care of there, I had to come back to my place, and I could not walk or move around for a long period of time, possibly up to, if I can recall, 2 weeks. Okay. During that time, Tara was my caretaker. That's when she was given a key to get in and out because I could not go up and down the steps without having her come in to take care of me. Well, time goes by. Now I'm at the end of this, and I've healed up and I'm ready to go back to work. So she has stayed over. She stayed behind that morning to show herself out. Once I had gone to work, she had called me and said, "We need to talk." And I said, "Okay." Well, she said she would meet me back at the house, meet me back at my place. While I was gone, what she had found, I had a TV armoire with VHS tapes. And as embarrassing as it is, and this is something I had since I was 19 from back in college, she found an adult video. It wasn't anything crazy. It was just one video in bright orange, I might add, so it wasn't concealed. It was just there. That hurt her feelings. She felt so disrespected. I was ashamed. I was embarrassed. I can't even quite remember the last time I had even seen it, but I was still in possession of it. She sat down in that argument and she demanded, when did you come in possession of this? And then I further explained that when we were in college, back, I guess I'm 19 at this time, one of the cheerleaders was actually marrying another cheerleader. It was a man and a woman. They had been partners for a while, and they actually were getting married. Well, there was a bachelor party that didn't have anybody, no females show up or anything, but they had this adult video playing on the TV during that crazy little bachelor party guys kind of thing. Well, that's how I obtained it, because I asked the host, I was like, "Hey man, you mind if I have the tape?" I was not in a relationship or anything at the time. I'm ashamed to say that, embarrassed. But when she found that, I felt like I broke her heart. That was not who she was, and I hope it's not a representation really of who I am. I was a young man. She found that tape, and that was the only time that I can ever recall that she raised her voice at me. And she demanded that I destroy the tape and throw it in the dumpster by my apartments with her hands on her hips, watching me. And I did. And we agreed, and I talked it out, and I laid everything out for her as she asked, and I was laying all my cards on the table. I was honest with her. She chose to show me grace, and she was understanding, and we made up that same day and in that evening. Okay? But that always stayed in the forefront of my mind as the time that I could have jeopardized our relationship. And I've always shown her respect. And I didn't realize I was showing her disrespect in that fashion at that time. But she made it clear that that was inappropriate and that I should never do that again. And I agreed. And that's the incident that I explained to law enforcement when they asked me, is there ever a time that's what I hear. Is there ever a time that you have jeopardized your relationship? And that's what I tell them. I tell them that story. And that's the context of where that answer came from.
Judge, I don't have any other questions for Mr. Melton.
Any recross, Mr. Cruz? Go ahead.
Mr. Melton, you've gone to Miss Baker's house with her before, right? We've agreed on that?
Yes, sir.
Okay, it's fair to say that you would see her take out her key and unlock the door. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
So you would know what her house key looks like. Is that correct?
I guess it looks like a house key. Yes, sir.
And you would agree if you showed up to Miss Baker's house unannounced, she would probably let you in. Is that right?
If I showed up to her house unannounced and knocked on the door and she answered the door?
Correct.
Yes.
No other questions?
Any redirect, Mr. Yamachili?
No, Your Honor.
May this witness be excused.
We'd ask that he is.
Any objection from the defense?
No, ma'am.
You are free to go, sir. Ladies and gentlemen, we are going to take a lunch break. It is late, but we are going to take a lunch break. I'm going to ask that, of course, when you leave this building, you don't discuss the case. You don't do any research, as we have discussed. You don't go to any of the locations you may have heard about. We're going to take a lunch break until 3:15, so it'll allow you some time to get to your cars and things of that nature. The deputies will escort you, of course, as a group to the elevator and will escort you to the beginning of the parking deck. Enjoy your lunch. We'll see you back here at 3:15. Thank you for your patience.